Dear listener, to Sleepy Science Story Facts, your gentle bedtime story for this peaceful night. A soft sleep story designed to help you fall asleep beneath the calm and shining mysteries of the universe. And as this relaxing story begins, there is nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to finish, and nowhere you need to go. Because, for now, your only task is to rest, to breathe, and to drift slowly into deep sleep, while the oldest wonders in space unfold at the quietest possible pace. Let your breathing loosen first, without effort, as though the air itself has become warm silk moving in and out of you. And imagine that with every soft exhale, the day becomes lighter, less detailed, less urgent, until even your thoughts seem to dim like distant windows on a faraway shoreline. And with every gentle inhale, imagine a calm darkness gathering around you, not empty, not lonely, but velvety and kind, like a vast night sky laid carefully over your shoulders. In this nighttime story, we begin not with noise or danger, but with stillness, because space, for all its grandeur, is also a place of remarkable patience, where whole clouds of gas can drift for millions of years, where light can travel across impossible distances simply to arrive as a faint silver whisper, and where some of the greatest mysteries do not feel sharp or frightening at all, but soft, deep, and almost tender when approached in a state of calm attention. Tonight we drift toward one of those mysteries, a dormant black hole, not as explorers racing toward discovery, but as quiet companions floating at a respectful distance, where gravity is not a trap in our story, but a slow presence, a velvet pull at the edge of perception, a reminder that even the darkest objects in the cosmos can rest in silence for ages longer than civilizations, oceans, mountains, or memory itself. Black holes are often spoken of with urgency. Yet one of the most soothing facts about them is that many are quiet for very long stretches of time, resting in darkness, feeding on almost nothing, revealing themselves only through their influence. And there is something deeply calming in that idea, that a mighty object can spend eons in stillness, doing almost nothing visible at all. So as this calming narration continues, imagine yourself in a small, silent vessel with no hard angles and no alarms, its windows wide and clear, its surfaces warm with low amber light. And beyond the glass, there is only the soft dusting of stars, a patient spread of darkness, and far ahead, nearly hidden against the cosmic black, the subtle region where space curves around a sleeping giant. One of the most relaxing facts about space mysteries is that much of the universe is learned indirectly, through shadows, motion, and absence, because astronomers often discover the unseen by watching how nearby stars move, how gas warms, or how light bends. And in a sleepy way, this means the universe does not always announce itself with brightness. Sometimes it is understood through the gentlest traces, the quietest clues, the almost invisible handwriting of gravity across the dark. As we drift closer, still very safe and very far away, imagine time itself becoming spacious. Because another beautiful fact about black holes is that gravity changes the pace at which time passes. And while the effect becomes extreme only near the deepest well, the idea alone is enough to soothe the mind. In this universe, Bedtime is not rigid, not mechanical, not one flat road for everyone, but a soft fabric that can stretch and relax, fold and deepen, depending on where you are and how gently the cosmos is holding you. Round us, the stars appear steady, but some are older than the forms of life that once ruled Earth. And some of the light entering our window tonight began its journey before any human name was spoken, before cities glowed, before maps were drawn, which means that to look into space is to look into a layered history of patience. And perhaps that is why it makes such a lovely setting for a gentle bedtime. The universe is in no hurry, and for this hour, neither are you. Another comforting mystery lies in the darkness itself, because the black between stars is not truly empty. It contains thin gases, wandering particles, quiet radiation, hidden matter, and fields extending invisibly across immense distances. So even the void has texture, even silence has content, even emptiness is only emptiness from far away. Ahead, the dormant black hole remains mostly invisible, yet not entirely absent, because the stars nearest it curve in delicate obedience, moving along paths shaped by something they cannot outshine. And this too can be restful to imagine that there are forces in the universe so profound they do not need to flash or speak loudly to be known. Our vessel continues at a dreamlike pace, and no countdown marks our passage, only the slow rotation of a pale blue instrument ring and the occasional drift of a tiny crystal of frozen vapor past the window, sparkling once and then disappearing into the dark. And while you listen, you may notice your own mind beginning to imitate that motion, thoughts arriving briefly, shining faintly, then dissolving without effort. In many ways, that is the true invitation of this sleep story, to let every fact become a lullaby, every scientific mystery a softer place to rest, every cosmic distance a permission to release the small tightness of ordinary hours. So settle a little deeper now as we enter the quiet neighborhood of the unseen, where a resting black hole shapes the stars without showing its face, where time widens, where gravity hums without sound, and where the ancient darkness is not something to fear, but something vast enough to hold every waking thought until it gently loosens and fades towards sleep. Now that the mind has begun to loosen and the body has started to grow pleasantly heavy, we continue this sleep story by drifting a little deeper into the quiet province around the dormant black hole, where almost nothing seems to happen at first glance, and yet everything is being shaped by a presence so calm and so complete that even the nearest stars seem to move with a kind of reverence, tracing slow, luminous pathways through the dark, as though they too understand they are circling one of the oldest and most patient mysteries in the universe. Outside the vessel, the darkness has changed in a way that is difficult to name, not brighter, not dimmer, but richer somehow, as if space itself has become thicker with meaning. And in that slow and velvety silence, the eye begins to notice delicate details, a pale ribbon of gas turning far away like silk in cold water, a cluster of distant stars glimmering with the softness of candlelight seen through a sleeping house, and at the center of our attention, not visible as an object exactly, but felt as a graceful arrangement of motion, the quiet signature of gravity bending the region around us into a shape both invisible and immense. One of the most relaxing facts about space mysteries is that some of the most powerful things in existence reveal themselves gently, not through noise, but through pattern. And here in this nighttime story, the black hole does not roar or flare or demand to be witnessed. Instead, it expresses itself through the slow obedience of nearby matter, through the slight curving of light, through a hush so deep that even the mind begins to imitate it, slowing, softening, giving up its sharp edges in favor of something wider and more peaceful. Imagine for a moment that each thought in your mind is one of those distant stars, and rather than rushing in straight and hurried lines, each one is now following a smooth and effortless orbit, looping through awareness, and then gliding away again, leaving behind no strain at all, only space, only breath, only that calm narration of existence that says you do not need to hold on so tightly to any one idea tonight. The vessel moves with exquisite care, guided not by urgency, but by balance. And the farther we drift into this region, the more clearly we can sense another beautiful truth about the cosmos, which is that order often emerges from immense distance and immense time. Because even around a black hole, perhaps especially around a black hole, there are rhythms, cycles, and structures that can endure for ages, with stars circling over spans longer than human history, and gas clouds slowly stretching into elegant forms that would seem motionless if we watched only for a single night. This is one reason space can make such a perfect bedtime story, because it invites the mind into scales so large that ordinary worries begin to shrink on their own, becoming small and quiet and far away, like dim lights left behind on a coastline as you sail gently out into a moonless sea. If you listen closely with the imagination, you might almost feel the black hole not as a threat, but as a still point in a turning world, a center of gravity around which everything relaxes into its path. And there is comfort in that image, in the idea that even the universe knows how to settle, how to arrange itself into slow curves and long pauses, how to let motion become graceful rather than hurried. Another soothing fact is that light itself can be bent by gravity. So the view before us is not only what is there, but how space has shaped what is there, as though the universe were gently folding its own fabric, making soft distortions and subtle lenses that turn distant starlight into a quiet form of storytelling somewhere beyond our sight. Photons have been traveling for years, centuries, perhaps much longer, and only now do they arrive at our window, carrying ancient brightness in delicate threads, which means that every small shimmer we see is a message from another time, arriving without haste, arriving exactly when it can. And perhaps your own rest can happen like that too, not forced, not chased, but allowed to arrive in its own gentle way. In this relaxing story, the dormant black hole becomes less like an object and more like an atmosphere, a patient influence, a kind of dark music without sound. And the more we remain near it, still safely distant, the more the body seems to understand that it can let go of one more layer of tension, then another, as though gravity itself we're kindly lifting the burden of wakefulness rather than adding to it. The instruments aboard our vessel glow in soft amber arcs, each line stable and serene, and the cabin air remains warm, still, and perfectly hushed, while beyond the glass, a handful of stars pass slowly behind a faint gravitational shimmer, their positions ever so slightly altered by the sleeping giant before us. You do not need to picture every detail with precision, because this gentle bedtime journey is not asking for effort, only receptivity, only that you float here for a while in the velvet dark, and let the science become a lullaby. Let the mystery become a blanket. Let the distant turning of stars remind you that the deepest things in existence often move in silence, and that silence can be trusted as we continue to circle the outer reaches of this quiet phenomenon. The universe seems to grow larger and softer at the same time, expanding outward into endless depth, while also folding inward into a cradle of deep sleep. And somewhere within that paradox, so spacious and so calm, your thoughts may already be thinning into dream, drifting like dust through starlight, untroubled, unhurried, and ready at last to fall asleep. As our gentle bedtime story continues, the vessel settles into an even softer rhythm, and the silence around us begins to feel less like emptiness and more like a vast, living stillness, a slow and tender field in which every mote of light has all the time in the universe to arrive, to shimmer once, and to rest again in the folds of distance. And here, in this relaxing story meant to help you fall asleep, we drift beside one of the loveliest mysteries in space, which is not only the black hole itself, but the way the universe arranges beauty around what cannot be directly seen. Ahead and slightly below our view, a stream of ancient starlight appears to bend with delicate grace, as though poured along an invisible curve. And this is one of the soft wonders of gravity, that it can guide light without touching it, shaping brightness into subtle arcs, so gentle they seem almost dreamlike. And as you listen, you may imagine your own thoughts being guided in the same quiet way, no longer sharp or restless, but curving into smoother patterns, circling toward stillness. The dormant black hole remains hidden in the dark, patient as ever, yet its presence is written everywhere in the motions around it. And one of the most comforting facts about the cosmos is that so much can be known through relationship, through the calm influence one thing has on another, through the patient reading of motion, temperature, distance, and time, which means the universe often reveals its truths in whispers rather than declarations. This region of space feels almost ceremonial in its calm, with stars arranged at wide intervals, like lanterns, placed very carefully along an endless path, and between them lie broad oceans of darkness, filled with particles too thin to see, faint radiation too soft to feel, and stretches of cold so complete that even movement seems to become thoughtful there, unhurried and dignified, as though the whole scene were participating in a gentle bedtime of its own. Our vessel glides onward, not toward danger, but toward understanding, and the instruments continue their low amber glow, stable and untroubled, while beyond the window, a dim cloud of gas turns slowly upon itself, carrying the memory of forces that have been working for ages longer than any human lifetime. And perhaps there is something deeply restful in remembering that the grandest structures in existence are formed not in panic or haste, but through patience, repetition, and quiet duration. Another soothing mystery of space is that darkness is often not the absence of wonder, but the place where wonder becomes easiest to notice. Because when brightness is rare, every faint glimmer matters more. Every tiny shift becomes meaningful, and every star seems to speak in a more intimate voice, so that even the blackness surrounding us now feels rich rather than bare, layered rather than empty, like velvet embroidered with very old and very distant fire. In this nighttime story, we let ourselves remain safely in the outer sanctuary of the black hole's reach, where its gravity is not oppressive, but architectural, shaping the region with such elegance that even the spacing of light feels composed. And here we meet another gentle fact. Some black holes sleep through long ages between meals, existing in a state of deep cosmic quiet, almost invisible except for the graceful order they impose on nearby matter. And that idea, a mighty thing at rest, can be a wonderful companion for deep sleep. The mind does not always need brightness to feel calm. Sometimes it needs softness, spaciousness, and a sense that not everything must be fully seen to be fully real. And space offers that comfort again and again, because its greatest truths are often held in the unseen, in dark matter, in curved space-time, in the hidden interiors of stars, in the patient silence between signals crossing the cold. If you imagine looking out of the vessel now, you might notice how the stars seem less like points and more like breathing presences, each one steady, each one remote, each one sending out light that began its journey long before this moment of listening. And when that thought arrives, let it loosen you a little further, because the universe is old enough to hold all unfinished things and gentle enough tonight to carry them away from the front of your mind. The air inside the cabin remains warm, almost hushed into stillness, and the faint vibration beneath the floor is so even that it feels like a cradle more than a machine. While outside, space continues its slow, almost ceremonial display of hidden structure, with one star passing behind a slight gravitational distortion and emerging again just a breath from where the eye expected it to be, a quiet reminder that even light takes the long way sometimes. This calming narration asks nothing of you except that you continue to soften, continue to float, continue to let the science become soothing rather than technical. Because mystery does not always need solving in order to be healing. Sometimes it only needs witnessing gently, with the body growing heavier and the thoughts growing dimmer. So we remain here a little longer beside the sleeping giant, in the peaceful outer hush of its influence, watching starlight follow invisible roads through the velvet dark. And as those distant lights bend and pass and fade into the great stillness beyond, you may feel your own awareness doing the same, drifting gradually away from effort, away from detail, away from waking, toward that calm interior horizon where a sleep story becomes a dream, and a dream becomes the soft beginning of rest. Now the vessel drifts so smoothly that motion itself feels like a memory. And this sleep story settles into an even calmer depth, as though the universe has lowered its voice for the sake of your rest, inviting you to float beside the quiet mystery of the dormant black hole with no urgency at all. Only wonder softened into stillness. Only a gentle bedtime unfolding through darkness that feels wide, warm, and endless rather than cold or severe. Outside the broad window, the stars appear almost arranged, not in straight rows or tidy circles, but in those patient, natural patterns that only deep time can make. And one of the most relaxing facts about space mysteries is that gravity does not merely pull. It composes, it shapes, it gathers. It persuades distant matter into long, graceful relationships until whole neighborhoods of space begin to move with a silent coherence. And here, in this nighttime story, that hidden composition is everywhere. The black hole itself remains unseen, resting in such profound quiet that there is no bright feeding disk blazing around it tonight. No storm of fresh material falling inward, only the faint and elegant evidence of its presence, written in curved paths, softened light, and the slow obedience of nearby stars, which makes this sleeping giant feel less like an object and more like a hush at the center of things, a deep note held so steadily that the entire region seems to breathe around it. If you imagine the mind as a sky of many small thoughts, then perhaps each thought can now become like one of those distant stars, gently guided, no longer colliding or racing, no longer demanding to be solved before morning, but moving along a calm, invisible route, circling and receding until the space between them grows larger and more peaceful. And in that larger space, you may begin to feel the true softness of a relaxing story, the kind that does not entertain by excitement, but soothes by proportion, by slowness, by the ancient patience of the cosmos. One of the beautiful truths of astronomy is that scientists often learn most from what is subtle, and near quiet black holes, they may study the orbits of stars, the temperature of faint gas, or the way light bends just slightly on its way across the dark. And this means that some of the greatest discoveries come not from noise, but from attention, not from spectacle, but from still observation, which is perhaps why space can feel so companionable at bedtime, because it reminds us that stillness is not emptiness at all, but a place where fine details become visible. Far off to one side, a dim haze of interstellar dust glows with the palest bronze tint, touched by distant starlight. And although it seems motionless, it is slowly drifting through a vast medium that is never truly vacant, because even the darkest regions of space contain sparse atoms, wandering particles, fields, and faint relic light left over from the early universe. And there is something oddly comforting in knowing that the void is not barren, only delicate, not empty, only subtle beyond ordinary senses. The vessel continues at its careful distance, still well outside the black hole's dangerous depths, and yet close enough for the geometry of space to feel slightly altered, as though distance itself has become more thoughtful here, more elastic, more willing to curve than run straight. And this brings another soothing fact into our gentle bedtime journey. That time and space are not rigid frames. but part of one soft cosmic fabric, able to bend under mass, able to stretch under motion, able to hold enormous mysteries without ever needing to hurry. Perhaps that is why the scene before us feels less like travel and more like suspension, as though we have entered a pocket of cosmic patience where everything unnecessary has fallen away, leaving only the low amber glow of the instrument ring, the hushed warmth of the cabin, and the far, delicate turning of starlight around an invisible center. In this calming narration, even mystery becomes restful, because nothing here insists on immediate explanation. The black hole does not reveal itself all at once, and the universe does not force its meanings forward, but offers them gradually, through hints and traces and soft repetitions, much the way sleep comes, not as a switch, but as a series of little loosenings, the shoulders settling, the jaw softening, the breath lengthening, the mind releasing its grip, one quiet finger at a time. Another gentle fact about these deep cosmic places is that many black holes spend astonishingly long ages in dormancy, influencing their surroundings while appearing almost absent. And so, we drift in the company of something immensely powerful that is also, for now, profoundly still. A presence that teaches by example that even great forces can rest beyond the glass. One thin line of starlight passes through a region of slight gravitational lensing and seems to bloom for just a moment into a softer arc, as though the universe itself were smoothing the edges of what we see. And as that faint distortion eases back into darkness, it becomes easy to imagine your thoughts doing the same, stretching, dimming, dissolving into a more spacious kind of awareness. So remain here in this velvet, quiet a little longer, wrapped in a sleep story made of distant stars and hidden gravity, while the unseen giant keeps its patient watch, and the great dark around it feels less like absence than shelter, less like uncertainty than depth. And as the vessel glides through this hushed garden of invisible tides, you may feel yourself drifting further from wakefulness, further from effort, and nearer to that tender threshold where a bedtime story becomes deep sleep without needing to announce the moment it begins. The vessel now moves through a region so calm that even silence seems to have settled into deeper silence. And in this sleep story, as your breathing grows softer and your thoughts become more distant, we continue to drift through the serene outskirts of the dormant black hole, where the universe reveals one of its most peaceful mysteries, not in brightness or motion or sudden discovery, but in the quiet bending of time, the soft curving of light, and the almost tender stillness of a place shaped by gravity that no eye can fully see. Outside the wide, dark window, there is a delicate scattering of stars, each one shining with a patient steadiness, and around them the blackness appears almost layered, as though it were made not of emptiness, but of folded velvet, gentle and deep and endless. And somewhere within that great hush lies the resting giant we have been approaching all night, still hidden, still silent, still guiding the architecture of everything around it without ever needing to announce itself. One of the most relaxing facts about space mysteries is that time itself does not pass in exactly the same way everywhere. And near powerful gravity, it can stretch and slow, becoming less like a ticking clock and more like a soft river, moving at different speeds in different places. And perhaps this is why the mind finds such comfort here. Because in a bedtime story like this one, there is no need to rush, no need to hold tightly to the next moment. Only the invitation to float in a wider sense of time, where everything unfolds gently. Imagine that each breath you take is joining the rhythm of this place, lengthening just a little, becoming smoother, quieter, easier, while beyond the vessel, one thread of distant starlight slips through a region of curved space-time and arrives at your window by a path that is not quite straight, as if the universe had softly guided it around an unseen contour before placing it here, in this exact moment of calm narration, where it can become part of your relaxing story and help you fall asleep. The black hole remains dormant, resting in majestic obscurity. And because it is not actively feeding in any fierce or dramatic way, the whole surrounding region feels like a monastery of the cosmos, a sanctuary of deep quiet where stars circle in long measured arcs, where faint dust hangs like silver mist in a forgotten garden, and where gravity does its work with such patience that even powerful forces seem softened by the passage of unimaginable ages. Another soothing fact is that much of what astronomers understand about these hidden places comes from careful watching over time, observing the movement of stars, the subtle warming of gas, or the graceful lensing of light. And there is something lovely in that method, something deeply compatible with a gentle bedtime, because it reminds us that truth often arrives slowly, through attention rather than force, through stillness rather than urgency. Our vessel glides on with the softness of a dream, and inside the cabin the amber lights remain dim and warm, their glow reflected faintly on smooth surfaces with no harsh edge anywhere, while the faint hum beneath the floor feels less like machinery than like the steady note of a lullaby carried through metal and air. In this nighttime story, the outer realm of the black hole has become almost oceanic, not with waves or winds, but with currents of influence, with invisible tides of gravity moving through the dark and shaping every nearby path. And to drift here is to feel that the universe itself knows how to cradle motion, how to hold it, slow it, and let it become beautiful. One star in the distance seems for a moment to brighten, not because it has changed, but because its light has been gently focused by the curved space between us. And then it softens again, returning to its prior hush. And that brief blooming feels like a sleepy reminder that even the faintest things can be magnified by the right kind of stillness. If any thoughts remain awake within you now, let them become like those stars, small and far apart, suspended without effort in a vast and peaceful dark, needing nothing from you, asking for no solution before morning, simply shining for a while, and then receding as the mind grows heavier. The universe around us is immense beyond easy comprehension. Yet here in this gentle bedtime, it feels intimate too, because mystery, when approached slowly, often becomes comforting rather than overwhelming. And the unknown no longer seems like something to fear, but like a soft horizon beyond which rest can deepen. We remain safely far from any danger, only close enough to witness the graceful geometry of the sleeping giant's influence. And as we continue through this silver halo, where time itself seems to loosen and bend, the whole scene becomes more dreamlike. The stars more distant, the cabin warmer, the darkness kinder, until even the idea of movement begins to fade. So let this calming narration carry you a little farther now, through the quiet curve of hidden gravity, through the long patience of space, through the ancient stillness of a dormant black hole that does nothing at all except shape the silence around it. And as that silence widens and deepens, you may find that your thoughts are drifting farther apart, your body sinking more fully into rest, and your awareness gliding gently toward deep sleep, as softly and naturally as starlight following an unseen path through the dark. The vessel drifts onward with such softness now that even the idea of travel feels almost too strong a word. And in this sleep story, the night seems to have deepened into a gentler form of darkness, one that does not conceal but comforts, one that does not press inward but opens outward into immeasurable calm. And as you continue to fall asleep beside the silent mystery of the dormant black hole, the stars beyond the glass begin to seem less like distant objects and more like quiet lanterns suspended in an endless and tender sea. Nothing here is hurried, not the turning of the faint gas far below us, not the wide arc of the stars moving in patient obedience around the unseen center, not even the passing of time itself, which in this region feels softened, stretched, as though the universe has laid a warm hand across the clock and invited every moment to linger just a little longer before drifting on. One of the most relaxing things about space is that its grandest events often unfold so slowly that they resemble stillness. And here, in the outer hush of the black hole's influence, whole celestial motions become nearly imperceptible, leaving only the feeling of order, depth, and quiet, a kind of cosmic reassurance that not everything important must happen quickly, loudly, or all at once. The cabin remains dim and warm, lit by a low amber glow that rests across the curved walls like evening firelight, and the smooth hum beneath the floor is so constant and so gentle that it blends with your breathing until the boundary between vessel and body begins to soften, as if you too have become part of this calm motion through the velvet dark. Outside, one pale thread of distant starlight drifts across a region of curved space and seems for a brief moment to lengthen, not in any dramatic display, but in the most delicate way, like silk being slowly drawn through cool fingers. And then it settles again into the pattern of the night, reminding us that the universe often expresses its deepest mysteries through subtle changes, through quiet deviations, through beauty so understated it can only be fully appreciated in stillness. In this gentle bedtime story, the dormant black hole remains what it has always been, unseen and immense, a silent architecture shaping the paths of everything near it. And because it rests instead of feeding, because it sleeps instead of blazing, the space around it feels contemplative, almost sacred, like a wide, dark chapel where gravity itself has become the slow music of the room. If a few waking thoughts still linger at the edge of your mind, let them float here for a while as though they were small stars themselves, each one with plenty of room around it, each one moving on a path that requires no correction, no effort, no concern. And as they spread farther apart, allow the spaces between them to grow wider, darker, softer, until what remains is not the busyness of thought, but the soothing backdrop in which thought can fade. Another comforting truth about the cosmos is that much of it is hidden not because it is hostile, but because it is delicate beyond ordinary sight. And so astronomers learn to notice what bends, what warms, what circles, what glows just a little differently than expected. And in that patient way of seeing, there is a lesson for rest as well. Because sleep, too, arrives through small signs: the loosening jaw, the heavier limbs, the breath that deepens before the mind fully notices it has become calm. Far beyond our vessel, dust drifts through the darkness in a ribbon so faint it is almost only a feeling, touched by remote starlight that began traveling before any human dreamt of black holes. And those old rays arrive here without urgency, crossing unimaginable distances only to become a dim silver mist before us now. And there is something deeply peaceful in that, in the idea that the universe carries its messages slowly, faithfully, and without strain. We stay at our safe and measured distance, close enough to witness the serene geometry of hidden gravity, far enough to remain in the outer gentleness of its reach. And in that balance, the story becomes even softer, because the black hole is no longer a concept at all, but a presence of deep rest, a reminder that even the most powerful things in existence can spend long ages in silence. The stars seem fewer now only because your attention is growing quieter, and the dark between them feels more welcoming than empty, like a vast blanket being drawn upward over the edges of consciousness, smoothing the corners of every lingering thought. So let this relaxing story continue to cradle you as the vessel glides among the quiet lanterns beyond the hidden horizon, where time bends softly, where light takes the long, graceful way around mystery, and where the sleeping giant at the center of it all asks nothing from you except stillness, asks nothing except that you drift a little farther, breathe a little slower, and allow yourself to be carried by this calming narration into the deep and effortless peace waiting just beyond the last bright edge of wakefulness. The vessel continues its unhurried passage through the restful outskirts of the sleeping giant. And this sleep story grows softer still, like a room dimming by degrees, until even the edges of thought become gentle. And as you settle more deeply into this bedtime story, the universe around you seems to widen and hush at once, offering not spectacle, not urgency, but a long and quiet invitation to fall asleep beneath the calmest of mysteries. Outside the window, the stars are more dispersed now, spread like tiny lanterns across a velvet sea so deep and dark that the eye stops trying to measure it and simply accepts its endlessness. And in that acceptance, there is comfort, because not everything must be counted or understood before rest can come. The dormant black hole remains unseen ahead, not absent, but hidden in the most peaceful way, shaping distant paths with the patience of something ancient and entirely at ease. And one of the loveliest facts about such places is that their influence can be profound without ever becoming loud, dramatic, or harsh, which makes this region of space feel like a sanctuary made of gravity, silence, and time. The cabin's amber lights remain low and warm, barely brighter than candlelight behind closed eyes. And the faint hum of the vessel is so even now that it seems to merge with your breathing, as though machine and motion and body have all agreed to speak in the same slow rhythm. In this nighttime story, every detail is softened for you. The gleam on the window, the quiet arc of the instrument ring, the pale drift of faraway dust glowing just enough to remind you that even the darkest places in the cosmos are not empty, only subtle, only delicate, only waiting to be noticed without strain. One faint star near the edge of the view appears to tremble, though not because it is afraid or unstable, but because its light is traveling through a quiet fold in space, a graceful bend in the invisible fabric around the black hole. And that tiny distortion feels almost like a lullaby in scientific form, a reminder that the universe can alter a journey without disturbing its peace. If there are any thoughts still circling in your mind, let them drift outward now and become like those stars, small and far apart, touched lightly by unseen currents, needing no solution tonight, needing no conclusion, only room to float. Another relaxing truth about deep space is that so much of its beauty is made of slowness. Gas clouds taking ages to shift, stars crossing centuries of quiet orbit, gravity shaping regions across spans of time too large to feel in waking life. And when you place your attention among such patient things, your own sense of hurry begins to dissolve almost by itself. The black hole before us, though powerful beyond ordinary imagining, is resting. And because it rests, this whole celestial neighborhood seems to have settled into its example, as though the stars themselves have learned how to move more softly in its company. Our vessel keeps to the safe outer hush, never rushing inward, never disturbing the balance, only gliding along the calm perimeter where mystery becomes visible through pattern, through softened light, through the elegant obedience of distant motion. And this gentle observation gives the story its deepest comfort, because nothing here is asking to be conquered or explained all at once. Instead, it simply surrounds you with scale, with stillness, with the quiet reassurance that the cosmos is old enough to hold every unfinished thought until morning. Far ahead, a dim silver veil of dust catches a remote wash of starlight and briefly glows like frost under moonlight, then fades back into shadow. And the sight is so delicate that it seems less like an event and more like the memory of one, a shimmer so mild that it barely rises above silence. In this relaxing story, that is enough, because bedtime does not need brilliance, only steadiness, only softness, only a feeling that the world, and even the wider universe, has grown calm enough for you to let go. Another gentle fact about space mysteries is that what cannot be seen directly often becomes known by the grace it leaves on everything around it. And perhaps sleep is a little like that too, arriving first as influence, as heaviness in the limbs, as slower breathing, as the spaces between thoughts quietly lengthening, until awareness itself feels like a star retreating behind a tender horizon. The darkness outside the vessel no longer feels distant now, but companionable, like a great blanket laid across the visible universe, and the few remaining stars seem to shine not against it, but within it, each one held carefully in a stillness vast enough to cradle light for millions of years. So remain here a little longer in this calming narration, floating through the warm silence between the furthest stars, while the hidden giant rests in perfect obscurity, and the curved fabric of space carries every glimmer along its patient path. And as the vessel glides on through that serene and unending dark, you may feel your mind loosening further, your body sinking deeper, and your awareness becoming quieter and quieter, until this gentle bedtime dissolves into deep sleep as naturally as starlight fading into the folds of night. As our gentle sleep story moves onward, the vessel enters a stretch of space so tranquil that it seems less like a place and more like a pause held inside the universe itself, a long, unbroken hush where even the farthest stars appear to shine more softly. And in this relaxing story, made to help you fall asleep and sink into deep sleep, we drift with quiet purpose through the peaceful outskirts of the dormant black hole, where mystery no longer feels like a question waiting to be answered, but like a blanket of dark velvet spread carefully over every hurried thought you no longer need to carry tonight. The cabin remains warm and low-lit, touched by the mild amber glow that has followed us from the beginning, and the stillness inside has become so complete that your own breathing may seem to belong to the vessel now, slow and easy and almost tidal, as if each inhale were drawing in a little of the ancient calm outside, and each exhale were releasing the last small traces of the day into the endless dark beyond the window. The stars are thinner here, more delicate, each one suspended at such a great distance that they seem less like objects and more like memories of light. And one of the most soothing facts about space mysteries is that much of what we see in the night sky is already old when it reaches us, meaning that the universe is always sharing its past in a gentle voice, letting ancient brightness arrive slowly, faithfully, and without urgency. In a bedtime story like this, that truth can feel wonderfully comforting, because it means that the cosmos itself is never rushing, never demanding immediacy, never insisting that everything happen now, and perhaps your own rest can unfold in the same patient way, not forced, not chased, but allowed to come closer, one softened breath at a time. The dormant black hole remains hidden, still resting in majestic quiet, and yet its presence is everywhere around us in the graceful bending of starlight, the calm arrangement of distant motion, and the subtle way the darkness itself seems to gather into depth. And there is something deeply peaceful in the idea that an unseen thing can shape a whole region without noise, without spectacle, without disturbing the stillness it inhabits. If any thoughts continue to flicker at the edges of your mind, let them become small and widely spaced like those far stars, each one calm, each one remote, each one free to shine for a moment and then drift beyond attention. Because this nighttime story asks nothing from you except gentleness, asks only that you loosen your grip and float. Ahead of us, a faint wash of light seems to hover in the distance, not bright enough to command the eye, only soft enough to invite it. And as we drift nearer, we begin to notice that it is not a single glow at all, but a thin gathering of remote starlight filtered through dust and curved by gravity. A quiet veil in which the universe appears to be remembering itself. One of the loveliest scientific truths is that light can be shaped by the path it travels, softened by dust, redirected by mass, stretched by distance, and yet still continue onward over impossible spans of time. And there is a sleepy comfort in that endurance, in the thought that even the faintest brightness can travel so far and arrive so gently. The vessel glides on through this calming narration without any sudden change, without any alarm or sharpness, and the black hole ahead remains what it has always been in our story, not a force of fear, but a resting center around which quiet order forms, a deep hidden note beneath the music of the stars. Around it, space seems almost devotional in its patience, every subtle motion unfolding over ages, every beam of light taking the long, graceful road, every dust ribbon suspended in such delicate balance that it looks as though it might remain there forever. And though nothing in the universe is truly still, everything here feels as close to stillness as motion can become. Another comforting fact about cosmic darkness is that it is not blank at all, but filled with structure too faint for ordinary eyes, with sparse atoms, relic radiation, invisible fields, and the soft architecture of space-time itself, so that even in what seems empty, there is presence, and even in silence, there is a kind of conversation too deep and slow to hear. That thought can be a lovely companion as you settle deeper, because it means rest is not absence either, not a disappearance, but a quieter form of being, a gentler arrangement of awareness in which all the busy surfaces of the mind can smooth out and recede. The faint glow ahead drifts slowly across our view as the vessel continues its safe and measured path. And for a little while, the window appears touched by silver haze, as if the stars themselves had exhaled something soft into the dark. And seeing it there, so calm and so delicate, it becomes easy to imagine the whole universe breathing at an immeasurably slow pace. So remain here for a few moments more in this sleep story, floating beside the distant glow of the universe remembering, while the unseen black hole rests in perfect obscurity, and the stars offer their old and patient light. And as everything around you grows softer, quieter, farther away, you may feel your thoughts dimming into a smooth and peaceful darkness, until this gentle bedtime becomes only breath, only stillness, only the quiet and natural feeling of beginning to fall asleep. The vessel now glides through a region so calm that even the stars seem to have quieted their shining. And in this sleep story, as your body grows heavier and your thoughts begin to soften into the edges of dream, we continue our gentle passage through the peaceful mystery surrounding the dormant black hole, where the universe feels less like a place of distance and more like a vast and sheltered sea, dark and velvet smooth, carrying us without haste through its invisible tides. Outside the window, the scattered lights of faraway stars appear suspended in such patient stillness that they almost seem to be resting too, each one held carefully in the soft architecture of gravity, each one giving only the smallest silver whisper into the dark. And one of the most relaxing facts about space mysteries is that so much of what shapes the cosmos does so quietly, without sound, without suddenness, without any need to disturb the deep balance of the night. In this bedtime story, the hidden black hole is not a thing of alarm or sharpness, but a sleeping center, a silent depth around which everything nearby arranges itself with extraordinary grace. And as we remain in its calm outer reach, safe and untroubled, it becomes easier to feel that the universe itself understands how to move slowly enough for rest. The cabin is warm, the amber lights low and steady, and the faint hum beneath the floor has become so familiar that it no longer feels mechanical at all, but almost like the breathing of the vessel, a smooth and endless rhythm joining your own, encouraging each inhale to lengthen and each exhale to release what little wakefulness still remains. Beyond the glass, a dim ribbon of distant dust seems to drift across our path like smoke in moonlight, though it is far older and far more delicate than smoke. And as thin beams of ancient starlight pass through it, the ribbon glows for a moment with a pale silver softness before fading again into the folds of darkness, reminding us that even the faintest things in the universe can become beautiful when touched by light and seen with patience. Another soothing truth about these deep regions of space is that light does not always travel along the simple lines we imagine. Because near powerful gravity, it can curve and bend, taking a long, graceful path around hidden mass. And there is something deeply comforting in that idea tonight, that even what seems direct can become gentle. Even what seems far can still arrive. And even the oldest light can find its way slowly through the dark. If any thoughts still move inside your mind, let them move like that now, not straight and hurried, but softly curved, guided by invisible calm, allowed to travel without pressure until they fade into stillness on their own. The dormant black hole ahead remains out of sight, yet never absent, and that hidden presence gives the whole region a feeling of reverence, as though the stars themselves know to circle quietly here, as though the darkness has grown deeper, not from emptiness, but from rest. In this nighttime story, that depth becomes a kind companion, a soft place for awareness to dim, because the unknown no longer asks to be solved before sleep. It only asks to be witnessed gently, the way one watches distant lanterns across water without needing to know who lit them or why. One faint star near the edge of our view appears to stretch into a subtle arc before settling back into a point of light. And the change is so delicate that it feels more like a sigh than an event, the smallest visible signature of curved spacetime, a reminder that the fabric of the universe can bend without breaking, can shift without strain, can hold immense mystery in perfect silence. That silence now feels warm rather than cold, wide rather than lonely. And as our relaxing story continues, the black between the stars becomes almost like a blanket drawn smoothly over the visible world, covering every sharp corner, every unfinished task, every bright and restless fragment of the day. Another calming fact about cosmic darkness is that it is not truly empty at all, but gently filled with thin particles, faint background light, unseen fields, and the quiet memory of ancient processes still drifting through the void, so that even the most silent places are holding something, carrying something, keeping company in ways too subtle for ordinary senses. Perhaps sleep is a little like that as well, not an absence, but a softer kind of presence, a deeper mode of being in which the mind no longer needs to speak so loudly to know it is there. Our vessel continues along its measured outer path, never descending into danger, only tracing the serene border where hidden gravity makes itself known through beauty, through order, through patient influence. And this may be the gentlest lesson of all tonight, that great power does not always roar, that the deepest things often remain still, and that rest can be strongest when it is quietest. The stars seem farther apart now, not because space has changed, but because your attention is drifting wider and slower, leaving more room between each thought, more dark softness between each small glimmer of awareness, until the whole universe appears to breathe in long, unbroken intervals. So let this calming narration carry you onward through the soft turning of the hidden sea, where ancient light bends around a sleeping mystery, where the dark itself feels tender, and where every gentle fact about the cosmos becomes a lullaby, until at last even this bedtime story grows distant and blurred, and you drift beyond words, beyond wondering, and peacefully begin to fall asleep. The vessel drifts onward through the restful outer reaches of the hidden giant, and this sleep story becomes softer than ever, as though the universe itself has begun to whisper, inviting you to set down the final small weights of wakefulness and float beside the dormant black hole in a darkness so calm, so spacious, and so gently layered with faraway light that even time seems to settle into a slower and kinder rhythm. And here, in this relaxing story made for deep sleep, nothing needs to happen quickly, because the cosmos is revealing one of its most peaceful mysteries, the way ancient light can travel across unimaginable distances and still arrive with the softness of a memory, touching the edge of the window like moonlight on still water. Outside the glass, the stars seem fewer now, but not because they have vanished, only because the vastness between them has grown more noticeable. And that vastness does not feel empty tonight, only deep, only quiet, only rich with subtle presence, as though the dark itself were a velvet sea, holding each point of light with infinite patience. And one of the most soothing facts about space mysteries is that so much of the universe can remain hidden while still shaping beauty all around it, with gravity bending paths, dust softening brightness, and time carrying light so slowly that the oldest glimmers become the gentlest companions. The black hole itself remains unseen, still resting in perfect obscurity. And because it is dormant, because it is not feeding in any bright or violent way, the whole celestial region around it feels like a sanctuary of stillness, a place where distant stars move in broad, graceful arcs, and where even the faintest ribbon of dust seems content to drift without hurry for ages beyond counting. Inside the vessel, the amber lights remain low and warm, barely enough to touch the curved walls with a soft glow, and the hush in the cabin is so complete that your own breathing may seem to become part of the atmosphere, each slow inhale drawing in calm, each easy exhale carrying you a little farther from thought and a little deeper into rest. Ahead of us now, there appears a thin and delicate wash of silver, so faint that it could almost be mistaken for imagination. Yet it lingers there with quiet certainty, and as we glide nearer, it resolves into a broad field of ancient starlight drifting through fine cosmic dust. A pale shore of brightness shaped by distance and softened by the hidden geometry of gravity, and there is something profoundly comforting in that sight. In the way the universe can preserve light for so long, cradle it across the dark, and deliver it at last in such a quiet form. In this bedtime story, the science itself becomes a lullaby, because every fact about this region speaks of patience. Light traveling for years or centuries before reaching our view, dust hanging in delicate balance through the cold, space-time curving almost invisibly around the sleeping mass ahead, and all of it unfolding so slowly that stillness and motion begin to feel like the same thing. If any thoughts remain bright in your mind, let them drift toward this pale shore now, and imagine them arriving not as worries, not as unfinished tasks, but as little pieces of light that have traveled far enough, glowing softly for a moment before dissolving into the wider calm. Because you do not need to carry them any farther tonight. Another gentle truth about the cosmos is that what we call darkness is often full of structure too subtle to see at once, containing thin gas, floating particles, faint old radiation, and the soft, invisible fields that thread through the universe. And perhaps that is why this nighttime story feels so comforting, because even the quietest places are not empty. They are simply resting in a form too delicate for the busy mind to notice by day. Our vessel keeps its safe and measured distance, never pressing inward, only tracing the peaceful outer contour of the black hole's influence, where hidden gravity makes itself known through beauty rather than force, through curved light rather than noise, through the exquisite order of faraway motion. And this is one of the most relaxing lessons space can offer. That immense power can exist without harshness. That mystery can remain unsolved and still feel kind, and that the deepest things in the universe often reveal themselves most clearly when everything else has become quiet. The silver glow beyond the window now seems to stretch across the dark like a distant shoreline under starlight. And while it does not move in any way the eye can easily measure, it gives the impression of slow unfolding, as though the universe were opening one last calm page before sleep. The stars beyond it shine like tiny lanterns seen across a vast black sea, each one steady, each one remote, each one sending its old and patient light into the hush. And as you rest here among them, wrapped in this calming narration, the need to follow every thought may begin to loosen completely. The body grows heavier, the mind quieter, the spaces between words wider, and soon even the story itself may begin to feel far away, like a soft signal fading gently into distance. So remain here beside the pale shore of ancient light, with the sleeping black hole hidden at the center of silence, and the whole universe breathing in long, unbroken intervals around it. And let this gentle bedtime carry you through the last thin veil of waking, until the stars blur, the darkness deepens, and you fall asleep as peacefully as light disappearing into the tender folds of night. The vessel glides now through a hush so complete that it feels almost sacred, as though the universe has drawn a soft curtain across every remaining thought and left only this gentle sleep story, this calm and tender bedtime story to carry you farther into the quiet. And as you continue to fall asleep beside the hidden mystery of the dormant black hole, the darkness beyond the window seems to deepen into a richer shade, not empty, not cold, but full of serene depth, like a midnight ocean whose surface has gone perfectly still beneath a sky too wide to measure. The stars are fewer in this region, or perhaps they only seem fewer because your attention has become softer, slower, more willing to rest in the spaces between them. And those spaces are beautiful tonight, broad and velvety and patient, holding faint threads of dust and old light in patterns so delicate they seem woven by silence itself. Somewhere ahead, still unseen, the sleeping giant remains at the center of this cosmic stillness, shaping everything near it with an influence so graceful that nothing here feels disturbed by its power, only arranged by it, gently guided into long, quiet curves. And there is something deeply comforting in that idea, that even tremendous forces can move through the universe without noise, without urgency, without breaking the peace around them. Inside the vessel, the low amber lights seem dimmer now, softer at the edges, as though even illumination has grown sleepy, and the smooth hum beneath the floor carries on in one unbroken tone, a quiet companion to your breathing, so steady and so calm that it feels less like sound and more like warmth given a rhythm. In this relaxing story, every detail slows to meet you where rest begins. The faint reflection on the glass, the silver suggestion of dust drifting far off to one side, the tiny patient lanterns of remote stars held in the dark, each one shining with a reserve so gentle it never asks anything from you except notice. And even that is optional now, because the mind does not need to grasp every image for the story to soothe it. One of the loveliest things about space mysteries is that so much of their beauty is hidden in subtlety, in what only becomes visible when everything else has quieted down. And here, in the outer stillness of the black hole's domain, light itself seems to understand the mood, arriving not in bright declarations, but in softened traces, in delicate hints, in the kind of calm presence that can accompany a listener into deep sleep without ever fully waking the thinking mind. A pale bluish tint has begun to gather across one edge of the darkness, so faint it could almost be missed. And as the vessel continues its careful path, that color lingers like cool silk beneath the stars, the result of distant light passing through thin material and spreading itself so softly that it feels more like atmosphere than object, more like a memory of brightness than brightness itself. If you imagine looking at it for a while, you may find that it asks nothing from you but softness, because blue light in this faraway form does not dazzle. It hushes, it rests, it lays a quiet tone across the black, and soon the whole scene begins to resemble a night sea with a dim horizon. Though there is no sea here, only space and the hidden architecture of gravity, the black hole remains dormant, silent through ages beyond counting. And because it rests, its surroundings have become a lesson in peaceful endurance, stars continuing their patient courses, dust holding its position in delicate balance, light curving through deep time to reach us only now. And all of it seems to say that not everything beautiful must arrive quickly. If any last alert thought still lingers, let it become part of that blue quiet. Let it soften at the edges and spread into the dark until it no longer feels like a thought at all. Only a little color dissolving into a wider calm. This nighttime story is not here to solve the universe for you, only to let you drift through it gently. And in that drifting, there is relief, because the hidden things remain hidden without becoming frightening. The unanswered questions remain unanswered without becoming heavy. And the mind, seeing that it is safe not to know everything tonight, can finally begin to release its careful hold on wakefulness. Outside the glass, one thin ray of old starlight seems to pass through a faintly curved path and bloom for a breath into a softer line before vanishing back into the surrounding hush. And that tiny change feels like the smallest possible lullaby, a scientific whisper, a reminder that even the path of light can bend in kindness. The bluish veil grows more diffuse as we move past it, spreading itself thinner and thinner across the dark, until it becomes almost impossible to separate from the night around it. And that too is soothing. The way forms can fade gently rather than end. The way presence can become quiet instead of disappearing all at once. The vessel continues in perfect calm along the safe outer lane of the sleeping giant's reach. And everything about this place now encourages surrender. The slowness of cosmic motion, the patience of ancient light, the absence of sharpness, the immense softness of distance, until your breathing seems to join the rhythm of the stars themselves, long, quiet, and untroubled. So remain here a little longer beneath this starless veil touched with blue, floating through a sleep story made of silence, gravity, and old light, while the dormant black hole rests in unseen majesty and the universe around it keeps unfolding at the slowest and gentlest pace imaginable. And as the dark grows smoother and the stars drift farther into stillness, you may feel the story loosening too, becoming softer than words, softer than thought, until it carries you peacefully beyond listening and into sleep. The vessel continues its slow and graceful passage through the outer stillness of the sleeping giant. And this sleep story grows quieter in a way that feels almost impossible to notice at first, like a room dimming by the smallest degrees, until the eyes no longer seek edges and the mind no longer reaches for the next thought. And as you settle more deeply into this bedtime story, the darkness beyond the window becomes less a backdrop and more a presence of its own, soft and velvety and endlessly patient, holding distant stars as gently as a calm sea might hold scattered lanterns on a windless night. Here, in the peaceful outskirts of the dormant black hole, mystery no longer feels like distance or uncertainty, but like shelter, like a wide hidden chamber in the universe where everything loud has already faded, and only the most delicate things remain: the thinnest dust, the oldest light, the faintest curves in space, where gravity shapes the invisible with such tenderness that even science begins to feel like a lullaby. The stars ahead are sparse now, and because they are sparse, Each one seems more meaningful, more singular, more serene, shining with a quiet steadiness that never asks to be admired. And one of the most relaxing truths about space is that vastness can make small lights feel kinder, not lonelier, because when everything is given enough room, nothing has to press or compete or hurry. Inside the vessel, the amber glow has softened to the edge of dusk, the curved walls reflecting a warmth so low, and even that it feels less like illumination and more like rest made visible, while beneath the floor, the steady hum continues in one unbroken tone, so constant and so peaceful that it seems to blur into your own breathing, until the cabin, the journey, and the listener all begin to share the same slow rhythm. Far beyond the glass, a faint cluster of stars hangs in a pattern that almost resembles a constellation, though not one any human map has named. And as we drift by, their arrangement seems unfinished, as though the universe had placed a handful of silver notes upon the dark and left the melody open. And there is something deeply comforting in that image tonight. The idea that not everything beautiful must be completed, labeled, or resolved before it can be peaceful. The dormant black hole remains hidden at the center of this broad celestial hush. And though it cannot be seen directly, its presence is felt in the elegant spacing of the stars, in the subtle long arc of a pale beam of light, in the way the dark itself seems to possess a little more depth here, a little more stillness, a little more time. If any last thoughts remain awake within you, let them become part of that unfinished constellation, each one a quiet point of light with plenty of room around it, each one resting where it is without asking to be connected too quickly to the next. Because sometimes the mind finds peace not when every thought is solved, but when every thought is allowed to drift apart. Another gentle wonder of deep space is that even where little seems to happen, everything is participating in long, patient motion. Stars circling over vast ages, dust wandering in currents too subtle to feel, light crossing distances too great to imagine. And this can be so soothing at bedtime because it reminds the body that slowness is natural, that duration can be beautiful, and that there is no need to force arrival. When all things are already moving in their own time, our vessel keeps its measured distance, gliding along the calm outer lane where the black hole's gravity is sensed as harmony rather than danger. And the view before us seems almost painted in sleep, with silver points laid sparingly across dark blue-black depth, a dim haze passing far to one side like breath on cold glass, and one quiet strand of starlight curving ever so slightly as it makes its way through the unseen shape of space-time. That bending feels tender tonight, not dramatic, only graceful, a small reminder that even the straightest journeys may soften when they pass through places of great depth. The unfinished constellation drifts slowly across the field of view, and for a while it appears to hover in perfect stillness, though we know it does not, because nothing in the universe is ever entirely still, only so patient that motion becomes indistinguishable from rest. And perhaps sleep is like that too, not a sudden crossing, but a slow and silent change in which awareness loosens by degrees, until the mind no longer minds that it is drifting, The darkness outside has become very smooth now, almost like fabric without seam or fold, and the stars within it seem less like objects than quiet openings into older distances, gentle reminders that the cosmos has room for every unfinished thing, every unanswered question, every thought that did not find its ending before night arrived. So remain here a little longer beside the gentle arc of the unfinished constellation, while the sleeping black hole rests in unseen majesty, and the vessel continues through the soft architecture of hidden gravity. And let this relaxing story carry you farther from effort, farther from detail, farther from the bright surfaces of waking thought, until the stars themselves begin to blur at the edges, and the dark grows warmer and wider, and everything you have been holding becomes lighter, quieter, and softer, dissolving not into emptiness, but into a deep and peaceful stillness where nothing more is needed, nothing more is asked, and sleep can finally arrive as naturally as ancient light fading into the tender quiet of space. The vessel moves now with such perfect gentleness that it feels as though motion itself has fallen half asleep. And in this sleep story, as your body settles more deeply into stillness and your thoughts become quieter and farther apart, we continue our calm passage through the serene outer reaches of the dormant black hole, where the universe seems to breathe in long, slow intervals, and every distant light appears softened by time, by space, and by the hush of immeasurable depth outside the window. The darkness is no longer merely dark, but richly layered, like folds of midnight silk resting one upon another. And within those folds, the stars shine with a delicate reserve, each one distant enough to feel ancient, gentle enough to feel kind. And one of the most relaxing facts about space mysteries is that so much of the cosmos reveals itself not through sudden brightness, but through patient presence, through the way old light lingers, the way gravity curves invisible paths, and the way silence can become almost as meaningful as sound. In this bedtime story, the hidden black hole remains what it has always been for us tonight, not a source of fear, not a sharp and violent force, but a sleeping center of gravity, a quiet depth around which everything nearby seems to arrange itself with calm precision. And because it is dormant, because it rests in such profound stillness, the whole region feels like a silent observatory made not by human hands, but by the universe itself. The cabin remains warm with its low amber glow, and the smooth hum beneath the floor has become so constant and so peaceful that it no longer feels separate from your breathing, but part of it, as though the vessel and the listener have entered the same rhythm. One slow inhale, one easy exhale, one long soft drift through the velvet dark. Far ahead, a delicate gathering of stars appears to curve along a faint arc, so subtle that at first it seems accidental, but the longer we remain with it, the more it resembles a hidden design, a quiet observatory suspended in the night, its lanterns placed along a graceful line shaped by forces too deep and too patient to ever need explanation in a hurry. Another comforting truth about the cosmos is that patterns often emerge only when we stop forcing them, when we become still enough to notice the relationships between things. And perhaps that is why this calming narration feels so restful because it does not ask you to analyze or solve, only to witness gently, only to float while the universe arranges its own meanings around you. One thin beam of old starlight passes near the edge of our view and softens into the slightest arc before fading back into the larger dark. And that tiny bending feels like a whisper from space-time itself, a reminder that even light can be guided tenderly when it moves through places of great depth. If any waking thoughts remain with you now, let them become like that starlight, gently curved, gently redirected, no longer traveling in urgent straight lines, but taking the softer path around whatever weighs on the mind tonight, until they arrive somewhere quieter and can finally rest. The dormant black hole continues to shape this whole celestial neighborhood without ever showing its face. And there is something deeply soothing in that idea, that what is most powerful can remain hidden and still bring order, that what is deepest can also be the calmest, and that not every mystery needs a bright answer before it becomes beautiful. Around us, the stars seem to drift more slowly now, though perhaps it is simply that your awareness has grown slower, softer, more willing to linger in the spaces between them. And those spaces feel almost protective, broad and velvety, and filled with subtle presence, with faint dust, invisible fields, relic light from ages too old to picture, and the quiet architecture of gravity holding everything in patient balance. In this relaxing story meant to help you fall asleep, the universe offers no edges, no alarms, no hard corners, only distance made gentle, darkness made tender, and time made soft enough to rest inside. The curving line of stars ahead resembles an unfinished instrument of light, as though some ancient hand had placed them carefully into the night, and then simply left them there to glow for millions of years. And there is peace in that unfinishedness, because it reminds the heart that not everything must be completed before sleep. Not every thought must be tied closed before morning. Not every feeling must be explained before it can loosen and fade. Our vessel remains at its safe and measured distance, tracing the quiet perimeter of the sleeping giant's reach, where the science of curved space and ancient light becomes a lullaby, where mystery becomes shelter, and where the mind is invited to release itself one last layer at a time. The darkness beyond the window has grown smoother still, almost like a deep blue-black fabric without seam, and the stars within it appear less like separate lights now, and more like soft openings into older and calmer distances, places where nothing rushes, nothing presses, nothing asks to be carried any farther tonight. So remain here beside the dreaming curve of the silent observatory, floating through this nighttime story, while the hidden black hole rests in unseen majesty, and the oldest light in the universe continues its patient journey through the hush. And as that hush grows wider and warmer around you, you may feel the words themselves becoming softer, dimmer, farther away, until even the story begins to dissolve into breath, into stillness, into the peaceful and unbroken dark of deep sleep. The vessel moves onward in such complete calm that it no longer feels as though it is traveling through space at all, but rather resting inside it, held in the great and patient stillness surrounding the dormant black hole. And And in this sleep story, as the last bright edges of waking continue to soften, the universe opens around you like a vast dark harbor, where every distant light is dimmed to its gentlest form, and every mystery has become serene enough to welcome sleep instead of thought. Outside the window, the stars seem to hang in deeper silence than before, not because they have lost their light, but because your attention has grown softer and wider, willing now to rest in the long spaces between them. And those spaces feel rich tonight, filled with the faintest threads of dust, the most delicate curves of hidden gravity, and the old, unhurried pathways of light that began their journey long before any listener closed their eyes beneath a night sky. The black hole remains unseen, still a sleeping center wrapped in perfect obscurity, and yet everything around it speaks gently of its presence, from the slow and graceful turning of scattered stars to the slight bending of a silver beam at the edge of vision. And one of the most comforting facts about deep space is that the greatest forces can express themselves in quiet ways, shaping the universe through elegance rather than noise. In this bedtime story, that hidden influence feels almost protective, as though the whole region has settled into the example of the sleeping giant, learning from it how to rest, how to remain still for ages, how to hold power without disturbance. And there is relief in imagining such immense silence not as emptiness, but as a kind of shelter where nothing needs to be hurried forward. The amber glow inside the cabin has faded to something softer than dusk, touching the walls with a warmth that barely separates light from shadow. And the steady hum beneath the floor seems to breathe in slow harmony with you, each low vibration smoothing the mind a little more, each quiet moment widening the distance between one thought and the next, until they no longer crowd together at all. Head stretched faintly across the dark, there appears a subtle ring of pale luminosity, so delicate that it might almost be mistaken for a memory of light rather than light itself. And as the vessel continues its gentle course, the ring becomes clearer, not bright, not dramatic, only softly present, as though the universe had drawn a thin silver circle in the darkness, and then allowed time to blur its edges into dream. Perhaps it is a distant wash of dust touched by ancient starlight, perhaps a quiet arrangement of light shaped by gravity's invisible hand. And perhaps it is enough simply to see it there without naming it too precisely, because a relaxing story does not ask the mind to grasp everything, only to float among beautiful possibilities until the need to define them fades. One thread of old starlight seems to follow the edge of that dim ring and then curve away, taking a long, graceful path through the hidden structure of space-time. And that gentle detour feels like a lullaby written in physics, a reminder that even light may wander softly and still arrive. Even distance may bend kindly, and even the most ancient journey can remain calm from beginning to end. If any thoughts are still awake within you, let them drift toward that faint ring now, and imagine them becoming quieter as they approach it, their sharp outlines dissolving, their urgency dimming, until they are only small pale glimmers moving slowly through the dark, held in a wide and patient stillness that asks nothing more of them tonight. Another soothing truth about the cosmos is that much of its beauty exists at the edge of perception, in the nearly invisible, the barely luminous, the almost motionless, and here in the outer hush of the black hole's reach. Those subtle forms become the whole language of the night. This nighttime story is made of such things, of faint silver curves, distant lantern stars, dark space rich with hidden texture, and the quiet certainty that not all mysteries need to open themselves fully in order to be kind. The vessel remains at its safe and measured distance, never descending toward danger, only tracing the peaceful perimeter where the sleeping giant can be felt through its serene ordering of everything near it. And as we continue through this slow current of darkness, the stars seem to grow softer still, as though the universe were dimming them one by one for the sake of your rest. The pale ring ahead begins to thin and spread, becoming less a shape than a feeling of brightness carried across the dark. And there is something profoundly calming in that gradual fading, in the way forms can soften without vanishing all at once, in the way presence can become gentler and gentler until it slips almost imperceptibly into stillness. In a gentle bedtime like this, even science becomes tender, because gravity is no longer only force, but guidance. Time is no longer only measure, but spaciousness, and darkness is no longer absence, but a great velvet field in which the mind may finally stop reaching and simply rest. So remain here beside the fading ring of the midnight current, floating in this calming narration, while the dormant black hole keeps its unseen watch, and the oldest light continues its patient passing through the hush. And as the ring grows thinner, the stars blur a little more, the cabin grows warmer, and the story itself becomes softer than language, softer than memory, until all that is left is a slow breath, a peaceful drifting, and the quiet, natural feeling of beginning to fall asleep into deep sleep. The vessel glides now through a stillness so complete that it feels as if the universe itself has paused to breathe. And in this sleep story, as the final layers of wakefulness loosen and fall away, we continue our gentle passage along the serene outer reaches of the dormant black hole, where nothing startles, nothing rushes, and every distant light seems to arrive with the softness of a memory returning just before sleep. Outside the window, the stars have thinned into scattered silver points that seem to float not against the darkness, but within it, each one resting in the great velvet, calm like a lantern set upon an invisible sea. And the black between them no longer feels empty at all, only deep, only patient, only filled with more quiet than the busy mind usually knows how to imagine. The hidden giant remains ahead, still unseen, still profoundly at rest. And because it does not blaze or feed or stir the darkness into motion, its presence feels almost tender now, like a sleeping mountain of gravity beneath the folds of night, shaping the region around it with such elegance that even silence appears to have been gently arranged. One of the most relaxing truths about space mysteries is that so much can be understood without being directly seen, through the calm obedience of stars, through the slow bending of light, through the way time and distance soften around immense things. And in a bedtime story like this one, that truth becomes a comfort, because not everything needs to be illuminated clearly in order to be peaceful. The cabin is warm, the amber lights low and fading at the edges, and the smooth hum beneath the floor feels so even now that it might be mistaken for the rhythm of your own breathing. A steady and unbroken tone carrying you farther from thought and farther into that quiet place where effort begins to disappear. Beyond the glass, a faint silver mist stretches across one side of the darkness, so delicate that it seems woven from the oldest light in the cosmos, light that has crossed uncounted distances only to arrive here in this gentle bedtime, dimmed and softened until it resembles a dream of brightness more than brightness itself. As we drift beside it, the mist appears to curl in the slightest arc, following the hidden shape of space-time, and that small curve feels like the softest scientific whisper, a reminder that gravity can guide without force, that the universe can bend without breaking, and that even the longest journeys may unfold with grace. If any waking thought still remains with you now, let it become part of that silver drift. Let it thin and soften and spread until it no longer feels like a problem or a task or a question, but only a pale trace moving gently through a wider calm. This relaxing story asks nothing more of you than that, only that you release each thought as lightly as dust passing through starlight, because the cosmos around you has all the time in the world, and tonight you may borrow a little of that patience for yourself. The dormant black hole continues its unseen watch, not as a source of fear, but as a center of deep stillness, and around it, the stars move in long, patient paths, so slowly that motion becomes nearly indistinguishable from rest. And perhaps that is one reason space can be such a beautiful companion for deep sleep, because it reminds us that slowness is not emptiness, and stillness is not absence, but a full and spacious kind of being. The darkness outside the vessel has become almost satin smooth now, with only the faintest dust and the gentlest scattered lights remaining visible. And somewhere within that hush, one thin ray of ancient starlight lengthens across a curved path before fading into the dark again, as though the universe were quietly drawing one last silver line before closing the page of night. In this nighttime story, every fact becomes softer the longer you remain with it. Light traveling over ages, gravity shaping invisible roads, time loosening around mass, dust glowing only when touched by distant stars, and all of it feels less like information now and more like a cradle, a calming narration made of science and silence together. The vessel keeps to its safe and measured path, never pressing inward, only tracing the peaceful perimeter where mystery can be felt through beauty alone. And the farther we drift through this outer hush, the more the mind begins to understand that it does not have to follow every star or name, every shape, or hold on to every word. Some things can remain unfinished tonight. Some questions can stay folded into the dark. Some thoughts can simply dim and pass like old light crossing a quiet sea. Head, the silver mist begins to thin even more, dissolving into the broader velvet around it, until it becomes difficult to say where the faint glow ends and the darkness begins. And there is a special comfort in that gentle fading, in the way forms can soften without vanishing suddenly, in the way awareness itself can blur at the edges and sink into rest with no sharp moment of crossing. So remain here for a little while longer beside the last silver drift before dream, while the sleeping giant rests in hidden majesty and the oldest light continues its patient journey through the calm. And as the stars grow quieter, the cabin warmer, and the story softer than language, you may feel yourself moving beyond listening now, beyond wondering, beyond even the need to follow the sound of these words, until all that remains is breath, darkness, and the peaceful natural feeling of beginning at last to fall asleep. The vessel continues its gentle drifting through the far and restful outskirts of the sleeping giant. And in this sleep story, where every breath has grown slower and every thought has become softer at the edges, the universe now feels less like a place we are passing through and more like a calm and endless room prepared quietly for rest, a dark and spacious chamber where the stars have lowered their glow to a tender hush, and where the dormant black hole remains hidden ahead, not as a source of tension, but as a deep and silent center around which peace itself seems to gather. Outside the wide window, the velvet darkness stretches in every direction with such softness that the eye no longer seeks its limits, and the few stars that remain visible seem to float like tiny silver lanterns set far apart on a motionless sea, each one calm, each one patient, each one sending its old light gently into the great stillness without asking to be followed too closely. In this bedtime story, that distance is a comfort, because the farther the stars seem, the more room there is for the mind to unclench, for the day to loosen its hold, and for the last bright fragments of waking thought to drift apart until they no longer crowd one another. The black hole itself is still unseen, still dormant, still resting in majestic obscurity, and yet everything near it carries the subtle grace of its influence, the slow turning of remote stars, the faint curving of ancient light, the quiet deepening of the dark. And one of the most relaxing truths about space mysteries is that the universe often reveals its greatest forces in the gentlest possible ways, not through noise, not through suddenness, but through pattern, patience, and silence. The cabin around you remains warm and dim, and the low amber glow resting on the smooth walls seems softer now than ever before, almost dreamlike, while the steady hum beneath the floor continues in a calm, unbroken note that blends so fully with your breathing, it feels less like sound and more like the rhythm of rest itself. If you imagine the body becoming a little heavier here, a little quieter, a little more willing to sink, then let that happen without effort, because this relaxing story is not asking you to hold on to anything anymore, only to float, only to listen gently, only to let the slow science of the cosmos become a lullaby. Head and slightly to one side, there appears a broad and delicate shadowed glow, so faint that it seems to be made of memory rather than light, a soft gathering of distant starlight passing through thin dust and curved space. And as the vessel glides beside it, the glow seems to spread like a quiet shoreline across the dark, not bright enough to wake the mind, only soft enough to soothe it. There is something deeply peaceful in the way ancient light can travel so far and arrive so gently, and in the way gravity can can guide it without force, shaping its path through invisible depth, until what reaches us is not brilliance, but tenderness, not spectacle, but hush. If any thought remains awake within you now, let it drift toward that velvet shore. Let it soften as it approaches. Let its outline blur and its urgency fade, until it becomes only a pale trace among many others, moving slowly through a darkness large enough to hold everything unfinished without strain. This nighttime story is full of such permission. Permission not to solve, not to name, not to conclude, because the universe itself is patient with what remains incomplete. And perhaps that is why deep space feels so well suited to deep sleep, since nothing here demands a final answer before morning. The dormant black hole continues to rest in its hidden stillness, a sleeping architecture of gravity shaping nearby space with exquisite calm. And around it, the few visible stars seem to follow long and graceful paths, so slow that motion almost disappears into peace. One thin silver beam, arriving from some unimaginable distance, appears for a moment to bend in a subtle arc before dissolving again into the wider dark. And that small curvature feels like the gentlest scientific whisper of the night, a reminder that even light may take the softer road when passing through places of great depth. The darkness beyond the vessel no longer seems empty at all, but full in the quietest sense, full of faint dust, invisible fields, old radiation, hidden structure, and spacious silence. And that too can be comforting now, because rest is not emptiness either, only a softer arrangement of awareness in which the mind no longer needs to keep speaking in order to feel safe. The vessel keeps its safe and measured course along the peaceful perimeter of the sleeping giant's reach, never descending toward anything harsh, only gliding where hidden gravity can be sensed as order, as stillness, as beauty unfolding over ages too vast to hurry. And the more we remain here, the more this calming narration begins to feel like part of the scenery itself, another low and distant current moving through the dark, another soft and patient thread among the stars, until even the words grow lighter, quieter, farther apart. Soon the glow beyond the window begins to thin into the surrounding night, its edge dissolving so gently that it becomes impossible to say where faint light ends and velvet darkness begins. And that slow fading carries a special comfort with it, because it resembles the way wakefulness leaves, not all at once, not sharply, but by degrees, by softenings, by quiet departures. So remain here beside the velvet shore where thought grows dim, while the hidden black hole rests in perfect obscurity, and the oldest light in the universe continues its calm and patient journey. And as the stars blur a little more, and the cabin seems warmer, and your breathing steadier, and the spaces between thoughts wider and kinder, you may find that this gentle bedtime story has already carried you beyond listening, beyond wondering, beyond the need to follow anything at all, until all that is left is the peaceful darkness, the slow tide of breath, and the natural feeling of falling asleep at last. The vessel drifts now through a stillness so complete that it seems the whole universe has lowered its voice to a whisper. And in this sleep story, as your body grows heavier and your thoughts become quieter than they have been all night. We continue our gentle passage through the peaceful outer reaches of the dormant black hole, where the dark no longer feels vast in a lonely way, but vast in a comforting way, like an endless harbor of velvet calm, prepared especially for rest. Outside the window, only a few distant stars remain visible, each one soft and silver and far apart. And because they are so widely spaced, the darkness between them feels generous rather than empty, as though space itself were making room for every last thought to loosen, every last worry to drift outward, every last bright fragment of the waking day to fade into something quieter and kinder. The hidden black hole remains unseen ahead, still sleeping in its deep and silent majesty. And yet, its presence can be felt everywhere in the quiet order of the scene, in the slight and graceful bending of old starlight, in the calm geometry of the stars that circle at a distance, and in the way the dark seems somehow deeper here, more settled, more patient, as though gravity itself had learned how to become gentle. Inside the vessel, the amber light has softened until it feels less like illumination and more like warmth resting on the edges of the room, while the low hum beneath the floor moves in perfect steadiness, so even and so peaceful that it almost disappears into the soundless rhythm of your breathing. And together, they create the feeling of being carried, not by speed or force, but by the simple kindness of uninterrupted motion. In this bedtime story, nothing asks to be solved now. Nothing calls for attention in a sharp or urgent voice, because the universe around you has entered a deeper hush, a late night stillness in which even science becomes a form of comfort, with gravity no longer a hard pull, but a soft shaping presence, with time no longer a strict sequence, but a wide and patient river, and with darkness no longer an absence, but a tender place where the mind can finally stop reaching. Far to one side of the window, a dim scattering of pale light appears like a shoreline, almost lost in mist, perhaps a drift of dust touched by ancient stars, perhaps a faint veil of brightness carried along invisible curves in space-time. And as the vessel glides beside it, the glow seems to widen without brightening, spreading like silk across the dark, in a way so delicate that it feels more like a memory of light than light itself. If any thought is still awake within you now, let it move into that pale harbor and soften there. Let it lose its outline. Let it blur at the edges until it no longer feels like a thought at all, but only a small floating brightness resting in something much larger and much calmer than itself. The sleeping giant continues to shape this whole region without showing its face. And there is such peace in that hiddenness tonight, in the quiet truth that not everything must be seen clearly in order to be real, and not everything must be understood fully in order to be gentle. Round us, the remaining stars seem almost motionless, though their paths are long and patient, unfolding across spans of time too vast for the waking mind to hold. And perhaps that is part of what makes this relaxing story so soothing. Because when you place your thoughts among things that move this slowly, they too begin to slow, to lengthen, to release the habit of hurry. One faint line of old starlight passes through the far darkness and bends by the smallest degree, taking a long curved path around hidden depth before fading softly into the wider black. And that little arc feels like the quietest lullaby of the cosmos, a final reminder that even light can travel gently, even distance can become tender, and even the oldest journeys can arrive in softness. The darkness outside is almost seamless now, smooth as folded velvet, holding only a few silver lights and the suggestion of that pale drifting glow. And the more you remain here, the less separate those things appear, as though stars, dust, darkness, vessel, breath, and thought were all beginning to settle into one calm field of rest. This nighttime story has no need for sharp endings, because sleep itself rarely arrives in a single instant. Instead, it comes like this, by softenings, by dimmings, by long, quiet pauses in which the mind gradually stops asking what comes next. The vessel keeps to its safe and measured path along the outermost hush of the black hole's reach, never descending into anything harsh, only gliding where hidden gravity can be felt as order, as depth, as stillness held over unimaginable ages. And now even the pale glow beside us begins to thin, dissolving into the surrounding night so gently that there is no clear edge where one ends and the other begins. Only a slow blending, a peaceful merging, a quiet surrender of form into softness. So remain here in the quiet harbor beyond the final star, while the dormant black hole rests in unseen peace, and the oldest light in the universe continues its silent passage through the dark. And as the stars grow dimmer, and the cabin warmer, and your breathing slower, and the spaces between thoughts wider than before, you may feel that the story itself is growing lighter too, softer than language, softer than memory, until it carries you past listening, past wondering, and into the deep, unbroken calm of sleep. This final chapter continues the calm, long-form tone and pacing shaped by your uploaded reference script, while serving as the slow, fading outro for this bedtime journey. As the vessel drifts through the quiet harbor beyond the final star, everything now seems to soften at once. The darkness, the distance, the old silver lights, even the feeling of time itself. And in this last, gentle sleep story, there is no need to travel any farther, no need to observe anything more closely, because the universe has already opened its calmest rooms to you, and all that remains is to rest within them, to let the hidden black hole remain in its perfect silence, to let the stars keep their patient watch, and to let your own thoughts grow lighter and quieter, until they no longer feel like thoughts at all, but like small fading glimmers, drifting peacefully across a deep and velvet sea. Outside the window, the scattered stars seem almost impossibly far away now, not lonely, not cold, but soft and tender in their distance, like lanterns remembered from the far edge of a dream. And the space between them has become wide enough to hold every unfinished thing without strain, every unanswered question without urgency, every small lingering tension without weight. The dormant black hole remains hidden in the great obscurity ahead, still resting, still shaping the silence around it. And perhaps that has been the gentlest mystery of all tonight, that something so immense could also be so still, that something so powerful could teach rest not through force, but through quiet presence, through through the graceful bending of light, through the patient arrangement of distant stars, through the deep reassurance that not everything in the universe needs to shine in order to be real. Inside the vessel, the amber glow is now so dim it feels like the last warmth of evening held carefully in the air, and the soft hum beneath the floor has become almost indistinguishable from your own breathing, as though the vessel itself were breathing with you, slowly, easily, peacefully. One soft inhale, one softer exhale, again and again, until even the rhythm of listening begins to fade into something calmer than sound. In this relaxing story, the science has become a lullaby at last, and every space mystery has softened into comfort. Ancient light traveling for ages, only to arrive as a whisper, invisible gravity shaping paths without noise. Darkness filled not with emptiness, but with subtle presence, and time stretching wide enough for the mind to stop hurrying and simply float. If there is any final thought still glowing in the distance of your awareness, you do not need to push it away. Only imagine it becoming one of those quiet stars beyond the glass, far apart from all the others, free to shine gently for a moment, and then dim on its own, until the dark between thoughts becomes larger, warmer, and easier to rest inside. The stars seem to blur now, not because they are changing, but because the mind is loosening its careful focus, and that loosening is welcome here, because this nighttime story was never meant to keep you awake with wonder, only to wrap wonder in softness, to place it in the gentlest possible voice, and to let the vastness of space become a cradle instead of a question. Somewhere far beyond sight, old light continues its endless patient journey. Dust remains suspended in delicate balance, and curved space-time keeps its silent shape around the sleeping giant. But none of those things ask anything more from you tonight. They are content to continue without your effort, content to glow and drift and rest on their own, while you release the last small habit of paying attention. Perhaps that is the most comforting truth of all, that the universe does not require your wakefulness in order to remain beautiful, that the stars can go on shining without being watched, that mystery can remain whole without being solved, and that sleep can come most easily when you finally understand there is nothing left to do. The darkness outside the vessel is no longer merely dark now, but smooth and sheltering, like a blanket of endless midnight drawn gently over the edges of the world. And within it, the final silver traces of starlight soften and fade until the view becomes less a scene and more a feeling. A calm, spacious feeling of being carried somewhere quiet. The vessel keeps its safe and steady course along the outer hush of the hidden giant's reach. But even that motion is becoming impossible to notice, and soon the journey itself seems to dissolve, leaving only warmth, only breath, only the peaceful sensation of floating without destination. So now, as this gentle bedtime story comes to its soft goodbye, you may let every word grow dim, let every image grow distant, let every remaining thought sink down into stillness, because the sleeping cosmos is holding its silence around you. The old stars are keeping their tender watch, and the unseen black hole rests at the center of it, all like a deep and perfect note that never needs to be heard to be felt. And as the last glow of awareness settles into the velvet dark, as the spaces between breaths become smooth and easy, as the story itself fades into the quiet where dreams begin, you may simply drift and drift and drift until there is no more listening, no more following, no more reaching at all, only the calm darkness, the slow warmth of rest, and the natural, effortless feeling of falling fully, peacefully, and deeply asleep.